Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured, why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, and every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 2 of HBO's The Last of Us, entitled Infected. I think this episode title has a dual meaning, as I think the best episode titles do. I think there's the very obvious meaning of how we first see an infected clicker. I don't think they say the terminology in this episode, but I heard them say it in the after show, so I'm just gonna call them clickers going forward rather than zombies, or I don't know. I might inadvertently kind of move back and forth, but I'm gonna call them clickers going forward since that terminology has now been established. But we first meet a clicker in this episode, and how much we learned about how they behave. So, and referring to the episode title, it refers to how much we learned about how they behave. AKA the rules, essentially, surrounding this particular zombie show, which I think we need. Whenever you have like a zombie show or a time travel show or a vampire show, you need to kind of establish the rules, like how does someone get infected? How does whatever it is, the virus or whatever the case may be, in this case a fungus, how does it move from one person to the next? You have to establish rules, and this episode did a lot to establish that. But I also think there's the less obvious meaning. It refers to the reveal of Tess being infected, her sacrifice, what that's going to mean to Joel and Ellie, and I think, of course, going forward, the impact that losing Tess will have on Joel. So I think that infected, it's like, okay, we're referring to the actual clickers that we see in this episode and their nature and everything that we learn about them, but we're also referring to Tess essentially as an infected. And even Ellie, I think, to a lesser degree, because we do learn a little bit more about the nature of how she became infected as well. So like there's a whole theme of infected that moves outside of just kind of like the detail that we learn about the clickers. But I gotta say, I really enjoyed this episode. Neildruckman directed this episode, and he's the other half of the showrunners. Craig Mazin, who was, like I mentioned in the preview video, worked on Chernobyl. And then Neildruckman is actually the brains behind the game itself from Naughty Dog. So this was his directorial debut, and I thought he did a great job. Last week I talked about how well the people behind Chernobyl do tension, and I think this episode was just another great example. And then like to learn that it was directed by the video game guy, it's like, okay, really great work. Like I feel like he probably had, I don't want to say had help, as if he's not, like he's completely inept at this, and I'm trying to give all the credit to whoever from Chernobyl might have worked on it. But what I mean is, like, at the very least, he picked up on I guess the best way or the proper way to do tension, because it didn't feel like this was any different. It felt like this was part of the same caliber of quality that I felt in the first episode, and I think Neil did a great job. They reveal in this episode that the clicker's tendrils run underground, and that stepping on tendrils in one place can awaken clickers in another and let them know where you are. And I think that is just the best example of how, when I heard that, I was like, this is why you bring in the Chernobyl people. That was fucking brilliant. Like, that was such a good idea. Like, as soon as they said that, I turned to my wife and I was like, I guarantee this show is going to do great work with that exact concept. And I didn't even expect to see it pay off in this episode. But, I mean, boy, does it ever. But, I mean, like, on top of the fact that I just thought that was cool, like, after the episode, I'm watching the inside the episode thing that plays after the credits, and they mentioned that that's not even a part of the game. So I'm like, this is something that they just created, they came up with for this show. And I'm like, again, like I said, that's why you bring in the Chernobyl people. Like, they could have just taken the game material and tried to follow that as closely as they could, since we know that worked for everyone who loved the game. But they saw an opportunity to improve on what the game did and bring that into a space, the television space, where this would work a lot better than maybe it might work in the game. And they just took it and ran with it. Like, for example, there's several times they would shoot. When I say shoot in this case, I don't mean shoot with a gun. I mean like photograph, like through the camera, like when they're shooting the show. They would shoot someone walking with just, like, they would show just their feet in the frame. And that worked for tension, because I'm sitting here like, oh shit, this motherfucker about to step on a tendril. And it's like, and they never did it. Like, it didn't actually turn into anything. And that's what makes this work is like, you get these fake outs, but there are instances where if you're someone who's watched like a lot of horror or you played games like this, you kind of already have that expectation of something happening, right? But then nothing happens. And then that works for the show because they get all of that, they get the benefit of all of that audience tension. Like, I'm not sitting here like this episode is boring or nothing happened here. I'm sitting here nervous, even though nothing is gonna happen, because they're just kind of like mining that built-in tension that we already have from horror movies or from playing this game or playing other games like it, like Resident Evil, something like that. It's really brilliant, and you just get to mine that tension without actually utilizing or heavily utilizing the clickers and whatnot. They don't have to rely on that. They can keep us on the edge of our seats without it, and I think that's really good and really smart. And the game does this too, by the way. If you're new here and don't know, I've started playing the game for the first time, and I've been kind of, my plan is to do weekly videos that kind of compare my experience with the game to what I've experienced with the show that week. So I released a video on Friday that was my first, I think I probably played it for like 2 hours, my first experience with the game, and I compared it to episode 1. And after this, I'm going to start playing the game again. I'm going to move to about where I feel like episode 2 ends, and I'm going to record another video for that. But like I said, so I'm doing these weekly videos to kind of like compare my experience. And the game also has several moments, and as a matter of fact, if it's not a cutscene, I'm automatically nervous anyway, where you think something is going to happen and nothing happens. And the game, just like the show, gets that tension, the audience tension, which in this case, the audience is me, but it gets that tension from me because I'm used to what happens in horror movies. I'm used to games like this. So I'm already nervous thinking something's going to jump out, and they get that tension and then nothing happens. So it's like, it just really works to where you're constantly kind of like on the edge of your seat. And they've really done a great job of translating that from the game to this show. Speaking of which, another thing I wanted to comment on regarding the game versus the show, in that first video that I did for my game experience, I said it probably wouldn't work if you had characters walking around and learning information via conversation like they do on the game, which is generally how the game works. Like in between like the big cutscenes, at least so far, it's been kind of like I'm walking around, exploring, I'm learning things via conversation. Now, granted, once things are learned, it's probably going to be less of that and more action-packed, but as of now, that's what it is. And I'm like, I don't know if that really works on the TV show. But that's exactly what they did in this episode. And it worked because, like I've been saying this whole video, you're getting information, but there's this constant anything could happen at any moment tension. So you're not just watching people talk, you're listening to the people talk, but you're still kind of just like, oh shit. Like anything can happen. Why are they shooting just his feet right now? Like, and so it just shows the brilliance of the showrunner. So, but let's talk a little bit more about this episode and not just hang out over here talking about this how they've done tension so well. So this episode opens with a flashback, just like the first one did. This time we're in 2003 Indonesia. And both of these flashbacks so far seem to only exist to explain to the audience just how fucked the world is in this situation. Like last week's was the one guy telling us like, oh, if a fungal situation happened, that'd be way worse than the pandemic. We'd be so fucked. And then this week we have this doctor in Indonesia who looks into this and was like, oh my God, we're so fucked. And I don't think we need any more flashbacks unless they're going to inform us of something new. Because, like, I don't need it. I'm clear on how fucked we are. So, like, the 2 flashbacks that really just exist to inform us on, like, the first one, like, how fucked we're going to be, and then the second one is how fucked we are. Like, I got it. We don't need any more flashbacks. Unless they're going to provide, like I said, new information other than how fucked we are. Well, I take that back. We did get a little bit of useful, it wasn't useful information, but its information becomes useful later in that this woman suggests that there's really no recourse and they need to just bomb these cities and just kill all the people there. And then we do find out later that not only did that actually happen, but they found some success with it. So I guess that is something else from that flashback other than just reminding us of how fucked we are. So we get back to present day. Ellie wakes up and Joel has a gun pointed right at her. And she gets questioned by Joel and Tess. And what I loved about this scene is that Joel and Tess ask her a number of stupid questions, and Ellie gives responses befitting someone who was just asked a stupid fucking question. And I hate when characters in shows or movies ask stupid questions and the questions aren't treated as stupid questions. So I'm glad Ellie interjected like what I feel is a little bit of realism into this back and forth. And I like how I'm pretty sure I can expect this level of snark from Ellie going forward and more of this kind of like sarcastic, snarky back and forth between her and Joel going forward. So in this scene, I do want to talk about these in this scene because I really did think these were good. Tess asks, what's Marlene doing with an infected kid? And she says, I'm not infected. And then she says she found me, she being Marlene, found me after I was bitten. And Joel goes, and she didn't shoot you? And Ellie goes, clearly not. I'm like, what a great answer. Like, motherfucker, do I look shot to you? Like, no, she did not kill me. I'm here live talking to you. Don't ask me any stupid fucking questions like that. I really like that response. And then she says she got tested to make sure that she was okay. Sorry, I hit the camera there. And she's like, Tess is like, how did they test you? And she's like, yeah, they made me count to 10 and hold in my hand. But I think the biggest thing that most impressed them was that I didn't turn into a fucking monster. And I'm like, I love this level of sarcasm because there's just like, it's the sarcasm, but there's the condescension on it too. And like having that coming from a kid makes it hit extra harder. And to be clear, it's the same character she played on Game of Thrones without the accent. Like, and there is a part of me that's kind of like, is this actress gonna end up kind of being like a one-note actress or someone who's only casted when they want to have a foul-mouthed kid who behaves like an adult? But that's problems for future Michael. Like current Michael is loving her attitude and her lack of patience for stupid questions. I that's just gonna resonate with me. I'm sorry, guys. But a lot of what happens after that sounds kind of whack on paper. Or in this case on video, but because of the underlying tension that I've been talking about this whole time, it works. So they head to this hotel, and the hotel has like an outdoor balcony, patio, whatever you want to call it, that allows them to kind of like overlook this portion of the city that they want to get through to go to the state building. And we see a ton of zombies, hundreds, if not thousands, laying on the ground out there. And this is when we learn about this tendril communication network that I mentioned at the top of the video. But I also noticed how the zombies seem, let me know if you guys noticed this, it's like the clouds move, which makes the sunlight move. And as the sunlight moves, it seemed like the zombies kind of like rolled in unison. And it made me wonder if they have an aversion to sunlight, like they're like, oh, get me out of this. And that would make sense because fungi thrive in like dark and humid places. So it will make sense like they might have an aversion to hot and dryness. So like I love that little bit of attention to detail. I don't know if that was just like attention to detail and nothing's gonna come out of it, or if there's something gonna come out of that later. But either way, it reveals that these people are thinking of everything. Because would people have called bullshit if light hit these zombies and they were unaffected? I doubt it. But light hitting the zombies and them being affected makes you go like, why is this affecting them? And then you think like, oh wait, these motherfuckers are affected by a fungus, not like a virus. And it just shows that these people are just thinking of everything and addressing potential questions before they even happen, or putting things out there into the storyline that kind of like get ahead of those sorts of things too. So like it's really great what they're doing here. And they move to a museum to get around the zombie blockade that they just saw from atop this hotel. And we learn more information about how the zombies can hear, they can't see, but we also get what I consider to be kind of like a stealth mode scene, which kind of like ties in to the game, which I now know after I started playing it last week. The game puts a heavy emphasis on sneaking around in stealth mode in lieu of actually engaging. I haven't even seen a clicker yet in the game, so right now it's just soldiers, but in lieu of engaging soldiers, you can kind of like sneak around. You ducking around, moving behind boxes, hiding behind walls, shit like that. So I think that's kind of cool, just to have something where it's like, oh, okay, this reminds me of the game, just the same as the truck scene did in episode 1. And then also in this scene at the museum, this is where both Ellie and Tess get bit, and Ellie for the second time and Tess for the first time, but we don't see it. We just get it confirmed later. But we also get a great look at the clickers in this scene, and I mean, they look absolutely incredible and terrifying. I mean, it looks like their heads are like split open, and then like, I don't know, like their brains were like turned inside out, or like almost like their brains look like a flower blossoming or something like that. Like, it's crazy what these things look like. I wonder if they're all gonna look the same or if they're gonna have some that look different. I don't know, but yeah, they look incredible. So they did a great job with the tension in this scene, obviously. But I thought the entire show would revolve around this whole mission of getting Ellie to the state building. And you know, like what I mean was, I thought they'd like start to head there. There'd be so many things that would come up, so many diversions, so many things that make them move something different. And the goal is always going to be to get to the state building, but they were never actually going to get there. Like, the state building was this kind of like impossible MacGuffin. Like, we have to get to the state building, but they're just never going to get there. As usual, I was wrong. They actually reached the state building right now in this episode, the second one. Which side note, I love how fast the story is moving. Like, I by no means do I feel like I'm losing anything by how fast it's moving, because I'm gaining information I need during these conversations, but I don't feel like this show is dragging ass. Like, I was really surprised that they made it to the state building in this episode. Like, I really thought this was gonna be something that was gonna be dragged out, and that ultimately they were never gonna get there, and the goal was gonna be like, we have to get to the state building, and then like they're gonna get so diverted that that's not even gonna be a thing anymore. But they arrive there after the museum fiasco, and this is when it's revealed that Tess is bit. And they find the Fireflies there dead. Joel says that one of them must have come back infected, and then like they all got into it with each other. Everybody lost, I believe, is what he said, which was a great comment. He has to shoot a zombie that looks like they haven't fully turned yet, but they're like, you know, still, you know, alive to some degree. And that's when the setup finally pays off. We see the tendrils going to the ground. It wakes up the zombies that we saw avoiding the sunlight earlier, and they're all on their way. And we don't even see, like, we see them get up and start to move, but we don't even get like an outside, like, establishing shot where you can see like a whole bunch of zombies coming there. You just get Joel sticking his head out, be like, yeah, we got like a minute. You're just like, oh shit, this is really about to pop off. And this works since, hold on, wait a minute. Yeah. Okay, yeah, this works since Tess is soon to be dead anyway, so she plans to sacrifice herself in order to allow Joel and Ellie to get out, and she ultimately wants Ellie taken to Bill and Frank, who we learned about last week, the two people who assist with Joel's smuggling thing, the whole 60s, 70s, 80s songs, all that good stuff. And she waits there to get blown up by this gas that she's knocked over all these gas barrels. The gas is barrels, then gas flowing everywhere. She's waiting for the zombies to come. Theoretically, she plans on blowing herself up and the zombies as well, which will allow Joel and Ellie to escape. But her lighter does not work, and the zombies get in. She cannot move. She's frightened, and I wonder if she's frightened or if like the fact that she's been bitten and the fungus is probably already taken her over is kind of like not even allowing her to move. Like, she's kind of like part of their crew now, but she still has enough of her own. You know, there's enough of Tess in here to still be like, oh shit, but there's too much of zombie in here for her to be like, okay, I need to move. But this leads to one of the sickest and coolest scenes I've ever seen happening, where this one zombie approaches her and opens its mouth, and we see the tendrils come out of its mouth, and it locks lips with Tess, and the tendrils go into her mouth as they lock lips, which is a completely fucking sick and gross and scary scene to see. And of course, her lighter works at that moment. Boom. Everything's done. But that was a really sick scene. And that reminds me, shout out to whoever it was in the comments last week who mentioned that, like I said something like this woman looked up, like one of the zombies looked up with a mouthful of hair, and it still looks like a mouthful of hair. But now that we've kind of learned what that is, the woman, whoever it was, mentioned in the comments, I don't even think I got the reply, but I saw it. It was something to the effect of like, that's not actually hair, it was the tendrils. And then we see that in this episode. So yeah, quick fix on my little faux pas from last week. But the last thing that I want to mention, like a quick thought before I wrap this one up. I love the scenery in this show. Like you get it's like a very good juxtaposition of I don't want to say a juxtaposition, but like a contrast within your visual space where you have like the decimation of buildings falling over, leaning onto one another. You have just constant, like it looks like a war-torn city. Like it looks like one that's been bombed, like the Indonesian woman suggested. But then it's also kind of mixed in with this beauty of all this greenery that you see everywhere. Even though it's unkempt, it's still like you have this lush green, and it's like you see the green on buildings, all that stuff. So it's like you get this lush, beautiful green shrubbery, and it's like, oh, that's beautiful, but like combined with like the decimation of this bombed Boston. And I don't know, I think visually it looks incredible. And it looks so much like the game, too, without looking like, oh, shit, this looks like a corny video game. Like, no, it looks like a sick apocalypse that also happens to look like the game. So I think this show is doing, it's hitting on all cylinders. I think it's not doing anything wrong at this point. So plan going forward, I'm going to resume playing the game. My plan is to try to play it up until, hopefully, if I can get there at a reasonable amount of time, playing it up to whenever they get to the state building. I believe I don't know if the test kiss scene happens in the game or not. I don't know, but my plan is to get to somewhere in that area and then get a video out talking about my experience with the game versus this episode sometime later this week, probably Thursday or Friday. So I will see you guys then, and until then, peace.